The White House Coronavirus Task Force tells people to avoid bars.
I hate to do this to you, but I'm going to take you back to an unpleasant moment in time.
Stay at home.
Stay home, stay safe.
Back to early 2020, when the COVID-19 lockdowns first went into effect. So maybe you could start just with who you are and what you do.
Sure. My name is Brent Underwood, and I own the abandoned mining town of Cerro Gordo.
That actually, I've done this a lot, and I ask this question to everyone. That's got to be one of the best answers to what I do. You know, it's like highly specific. Brent came to Cerro Gordo at the very beginning of the pandemic, in March of 2020. He had previously purchased the town with the help of some friends, and he was leaving behind this really successful life in Austin. He was leaving the bars, the restaurants, and the busy residential streets that he knew for a deserted town on the top of a mountain with an abandoned hotel, an abandoned saloon, an abandoned post office. You get the idea.
I wonder sometimes what my life had been like if I had stayed in Austin, not gotten in the truck, not come out here. I don't think that I would have had as fun of time as I had for the last 3 years. I don't think that I would have grown as a person as much as I did over the last 3 years. And so I think that while difficult being up here, I love it up here. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. And so I just think that every day it's pretty fortunate that I get to do something like this.
What initially caused the purchase? You said you bought it back in 2018, and obviously you maybe hadn't figured out exactly what you were going to do yet. What was that process?
Yeah, so I've always been obsessed with history. I've been a big history nerd growing up. Especially the American West, it just holds some type of allure, I think, in the American psyche. It's just something about that. Growing up, my grandfather watched Gunsmoke every day, just on repeat. He lived with us. We just watched Gunsmoke over and over and over. And before this, again, I was in Austin, and I had a bed and breakfast or hostel that was located in a Victorian mansion from the 1800s. After a while, I was kind of looking for a bigger project. So I was thinking, hey, what could be kind of the bigger adventure? And so I was looking at some different things. And a friend of mine lived in Los Angeles, and he sent me this link that was buy your own ghost town for, under $1 million or something like that. And I was like, all right. And he said it almost as a joke. He's like, this seems like something up your alley. And it was amazing. Immediately I had these flashbacks to my grandfather. The aerial photograph was just out of some painting or something. There's all these sun-baked buildings against these mountains that I'd never seen growing up in Florida. And I was like, man, that is the coolest thing ever. And reading more about it, it just grabbed every part of me.
Cerro Gordo is a town with a pretty famous history. At one point, Cerro Gordo was the largest producer of silver in the entire state of California. And at its peak, it had nearly 5,000 residents. But by 1957, the town was officially deserted. It continued to pass through a series of owners over the next years, but no one really lived there. At least not until 2020, when Brent showed up.
Originally, when we got the property, I kind of thought, hey, maybe we do some Airbnb, we even explored some different options of things that we want to do the place. But then I met a guy that lived in Austin, and he said, listen, you shouldn't do anything up there until you live there for about a year. He's like, the property will speak to you. You have all these ideas now, but you're trying to force your vision upon a place. you should go out there and live for a while and kind of hear what the town has to say to you.
What is it like being quarantined there during the pandemic?
The initial experience was very solo, one that was just kind of like my own adventure to have.
Man.
I almost wanted that though. I thought this
Yeah.
was like the most
Yeah.
adventurous that it could become, was kind of this idea of being here by myself to experience the land, especially during some type of a snowstorm, during a pandemic. Selfishly, it felt like safe. I just feel like that I was very far removed from everybody. There's a lot of fear, I think, relate at the beginning of the pandemic, like what's going to go, where's it's going to happen. The idea of being in big cities was not something that was terribly appealing, and so I just felt, at least out here, I have my distance, I have my space.
But Brent always had bigger plans for the town than it's just a place to call home. He has this vision that he really hopes one day to be able to share.
From day one, I've always wanted to make this a place that's always open to the public. I think that this is an important place to stay open, to stay visitors come. Even today, we just had somebody knock on the door that's a visitor, that can take free tours all day long. And so I'd love to make this a place where like the history here is preserved. The history is almost like celebrated and like put to light, and people are able to come up here and experience that history, learn from it, and also just experience the natural beauty around. I think that every year here, the town speaks to me more about what should be here. And so I imagine that vision might change and progress as the years. In Austin, I don't take it for granted here.
The project has not been without its severe setbacks. One of the worst moments came not long after he moved in late 2020.
Yeah, it seemed that things were going quite well. It seemed that the cold weather had left us. I had friends come up. The old caretaker Robert had just come back up. We have finally had people back on the ground to start to rebuild this thing. And then a few days later, the hotel burned down in this electrical fire that started in the building next to it. And it was just, yeah, it just took the wind out of everything. It felt like we were having momentum. It just took like everything was gone away. It was one of those times where I didn't know what to do or where to go. I didn't necessarily want to be here, but I didn't want to be anywhere else. I didn't know what was going to go on. I can't change anything that happened, necessarily. And so where I was thinking that, man, this hotel is impossible to build. You know, a trip to Burrow Schmidt's tunnel rejuvenated me in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's why I like the framing, because I think you're right. I think it's easy to frame as this guy spent 40 years doing this pointless thing. So crazy. But like, we all kind of spend our whole lives doing pointless stuff, if you know what I mean. Like, there's so little, we're just sort of, you're living. And I think in a weird way, having a mission, having a goal, having a purpose, even if it only means something to you, is a really deep and meaningful and like valid thing.
I have my why, which I think I was searching for a very, very long time. I think some of that dissatisfaction in Austin was not finding that thing that I felt was purposeful, that was meaningful. And so hopefully, much like Burrow Schmidt was kind of the inspiration to me whenever I felt a little bit down, then hopefully Cerro Gordo, hopefully it comes together. People are like, hey, you know, they built a hotel on the top of a mountain and brought a town back to life. Hopefully that's the goal. And hopefully that inspires some people too.
This episode was produced by
Gabby Gladney.
The production team includes
Doug Baldinger,
Chris Naka,
Camille Stanley,
Manolo Morales,
Baudelaire,
Amanda McGowan,
Johanna Mayer,
Dylan Thuris.
Our technical director is
Casey Holford,
and this episode was sound designed by
Luce Fleming.
And our theme and end credit music is by Sam Tyndall. I'm Dylan Thuris, wishing you all the wonder in the world. I will see you next time.